What's up, Atlanta United family? I am still injured, as always, injured and clumsy. Here with my guy again, who I missed last time. Where were you, John? Where were you? You left me.
High School Football Fridays, and that's since the high school football season is off and running. It is the game of the week on Georgia Public Broadcasting, so I get to wear a mask in public and be one of the very few people from a production team that is on site. Everybody else is doing the broadcast remotely, so GPB, gpb.org, and the GPB Sports app for your less than subtle plug about everything going on Friday night, starting at 7 and all the way through the evening. Let's see that cast, by the way. Where's that wrap?
Oh, so it's a brace. So we were on, obviously, last week, and I got to give a huge shout-out to Abby. She made a comment about me reaching out to her so she could take a look at it, and she thankfully came by, obviously with mask outside, and assessed my...
You didn't just, stick it out the door jam, and it's like...
No, she came and looked at it and gave me some PT tape, the KT tape, which I still have here and need to put on after I let more of the swelling go down. Told me that I need to make sure it's in a brace and wrap it and rice it and whatever. And then I think around Saturday night, a little bit after the Atlanta United game, the pain became worse than it's ever been, and the swelling had gotten worse. And so
how did you do this again?
I was playing soccer and decided to be a defender. Defender / goalie, and stood in front of goal, and somebody rocketed a ball directly at my hand. And then as I found out on Sunday when I got x-rays, that I fractured my wrist because of it. So it's good fun. Kids, sports are fun and great for you. Just if you don't want to be a goalie, don't be. So that's all I got to say to that.
Hashtag don't be a goalie.
Hashtag don't. I'm sure Jess is going to absolutely love that. But unless you're brave like Jessica Charman, then don't go after balls like I did. So that could be construed so many ways. Wow.
And we're walking.
And we're off. Obviously, we've got a very large show for you today. Again, I'm not doing this on purpose. So we have a very informative show for you.
Yes.
Going different ways. We've got a lot of things that we want to get into. Obviously, we're going to go over the chaos that was the DC United game.
Yeah.
And we won 4-0, which, hello, I will take it. And then we'll obviously get into some of the news that's going on currently. There's a lot of things up in the air, a lot of bigwigs today that said some really important things about a certain action on the field that took place in DC, as well as us looking ahead to Orlando. It's going to be a doozy. There's a lot of factors to this game, so we have a lot of information to get into. But let's go ahead and just start. DC, yes, it's a very poor team. This is probably the worst team we've played all season, bar none. But in hindsight, a 4-0 win is still a 4-0 win. And if that's something that rallies the team together and pushes them forward and wakes them up, which is this whole conversation Jason and I had before the game against DC, that this team needed to wake up, they needed to fight for it, then that's good. And I said this in the tweet when the game was live. After that first goal, you can't stop there. You have to be ruthless. You have to go after it. I don't care if they're a crappy team. You have to beat the ever-living crap out of them and not feel bad about doing it. Because right now, it's not about saving face or doing the right thing. It's about coming together as a team, picking up your chutzpah, and hammering it at the rest of the league. We have been less than sublime this year. We've been mediocre. Sorry, guys. At best, we really need to turn the ship around. That can go into euphemisms about Barco, and again, we'll get into that also. But really quick recap of this game by bullet point. John, jump in whenever you want. 4th minute.
Oh, no, I just want to hear where you're going. I'll fill in the holes here. You're revved up. I just want to see where you're going.
4th minute, we get a goal against DC United. And this is huge because this season alone has been detrimental to us in the first half. And for us to be able to flip the script, which is something that was said continuously during the broadcast, but to flip that script, to get a goal on them in the 4th minute, only pushes us in a positive direction. Obviously, Lennon had a beautiful ball into Gallagher, and Gallagher had a spectacular touch and finish. I had to watch it back because I wasn't quite sure Gallagher it was so silky smooth. It was a great run in, and you obviously see Gallagher continuing to do that throughout the game. But then we go on and go further, right? So the 10th minute and the 12th minute, Miles gets 2 good shots, 2 like candy picking, sweet tooth shots on goal with a header, and he still needs that goal for MLS. He is yet to get that. And he got 2 clear-cut chances against DC. We could have been walking away with an 8-0 game here, guys. We really could have. DC is in terribly, terribly bad with defense right now. John obviously had a shot on goal. It was a header. DC as well had a good chance in the 27th. They just looked disorganized. They looked lost. The communication was extremely poor with DC. And obviously, as you saw as the night carried on, they sort of just fell apart, which is sort of standard of how their entire season has gone this season. Then we go into the long ball from Anton Walks that comes to Mora. Mora has a poor clearance, lands at Lennon's feet, and holy cow, I'm going to stop right here.
There you go.
Goal of the week, John. He settled it, and I cannot believe I did this, but I literally yelled at my TV screen.
So it was one of those moments for you.
Yes, it was. I literally yelled, settle, and he settled it, and then I said, take a shot.
The telepathy was there for you is basically what you're saying.
We were simpatico.
There you go.
And simpatico. Holy crap.
Holy shnikes, yes.
Blew my mind. What was your thoughts? What were your reactions? Went in the back of the net.
It's all right.
Really?
10th player for Atlanta United to win MLS Goal of the Week. So congratulations, 17s. You got another MLS Goal of the Week that you can put on your mantle. Absolute rocket from Brooks Lennon in the 41st. And it is one of those moments when you sit there and you look at it and you have that reaction where you're sitting down and you're going, ooh, one of those. And it just, if the net wasn't there, or if the net was maybe a little older, it probably would have gone through the upper corner and out into the stands. But an absolute rocket from Brooks Lennon there in the 41st to make it 2-0 after the Gallagher goal in the 4th. And that gets us to halftime at 2-0.
It really does. It does give it. And not only that, but we started to see the breaking down of DC, right? Especially in that Lennon goal. The fact that nobody stepped up to pressure Lennon on that ball. He had time and space to really settle it and take a shot. And it's the same with what we've seen from DC throughout the season. It's this lack of awareness. It's almost the same issue that Atlanta has had at times, is this lack of awareness, that ability to fall asleep in the back. And repeating a notion that I said prior, and that was repeated during the broadcast, we flipped the script, and it was a beautiful feeling going into halftime with that 2-0 lead. It gave you a sense of, dare I say, hope.
See, that's what you need to. That's when you need your pregnant pause. You just need to kind of sit there and then come through with just from the diaphragm, hope. It's more than just, dare I say, hope. It's hope. It's just bring it from the diaphragm every single moment. Hope. And that gets us to the 46th minute and beyond. What else happened in the second half for you?
We'll get into it.
Okay, so you're at halftime. All right.
We're at halftime. So obviously, I'm pretty sure everyone and their mother's uncle that are Atlanta United fans are aware of what happened at halftime.
Yes.
And I feel like we need to take a second on that, but we're gonna continue. Let's continue on the action of the play, because as far as the play is deemed on the action of the game, that never happened, which is fascinating to me that never happened.
It was an unevent.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So let's talk then. We're going into the 65th minute, which has to be the goal of the season so far for Atlanta United. I mean, Lennon's rocket was beautiful, but talk about a team goal. You have Heidman to Gallagher, Gallagher to John, John to Heidman, and then Heidman back to Gallagher to make this beautiful touch play style goal into the back of the net. Was one of the most beautiful things I've seen this year from this team, and especially a team right now that's playing without a DP. That's a sign. You really want to see signs like that of these players communicating and driving off of each other, because in the long run, whenever we get Mourinho in, great. But we have to realize that right now we're working with what we're working with. And if we don't have a DP on the field, that's fine. We have players that will step up. And that sequence right there showed me that.
Well, and you're also seeing the continued evolution of John Gallagher, someone that we've spoken a lot of pretty much ever since he was with the Twos, and then when he went to Aberdeen, and now that he's back, you're seeing his continued evolution as someone that Stephen Glass trusts, and how he's just integral to what you're seeing right now up top. And it's fun to see this evolution, and it's fun to see him grow in confidence, and just be that part, just that integral part that we're seeing up top for Gallagher. It's really fun to watch.
Absolutely. And so the 70th minute, this is where we get into something, and I want to talk about this because, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting who said it, but Adam John Pillow Feet. I guess that's because he's so quiet when he comes up, or he has such a soft touch.
Just soft.
It's just a very
soft pillow. It's soft.
Adam John Pillow Feet, which feels to me like a D movie of something we shouldn't talk about.
Not going there.
Can we
but
please have a naughty option somewhere in the chain?
Yes, exactly. Adam John Pillow Feet. That's the naughty option right there.
It is. It really is. But Adam John, great header. Obviously, you want to see that go in the back of the net. But I will say, when it comes to looking at that, Lennon had all the time in the world to find out that cross, and John was not being marked. So, again, you want to relish in the fact that these players got these goals, that this team won in such a high capacity. You also have to be aware of the team that we were playing against. And, you know, there was a lot of talk after the game about us relishing in this win, right? Us relishing in this 4-0 win against DC. And people were like, well, you can't really be excited. It was a very poor team. Yes, we can, well, exactly. You can be rational, but also happy. And I think that that's a difference. We've gone through so much as a fan base this season that let us just have the happiness. We're aware that it's a poor team, but let us just revel in the moment. That's 4-0 for this team, because whether or not that changes the mood and the atmosphere in the locker room, on the training pitch, and the way they come out in the game, we're going to see that obviously in the game tomorrow against Orlando, against a rival. It's going to be a big game. This is the kind of game that you need going into that game, no matter who you play. You want that hype. You want that energy. You want to be ready to face Orlando.
Well, and at the same time, think about your tiebreakers down the line. And if it just so happens that you beat somebody 4-0, if it just so happens that you have a Rev Wedding situation or something like that, you are going to need every single goal that you can put on the board. And if a team cannot stop you from scoring, especially in this season, that is a season like no other on a bunch of different levels. If you can put a bunch of goals in the back of the net to help you out in goal difference, which helps you out in tiebreakers, because, I mean, right now you're looking at an Atlanta team that 8, 9, and 10 going into action later tonight and tomorrow, because Nashville's playing in about a little over an hour. Atlanta, Montreal, Nashville, 8, 9, 10. They all have 17 points. Right now, because Nashville has a match in hand, they're technically 10th. But Atlanta and Montreal, there is a 5-goal difference right now separating 8th and 9th in the standings. Atlanta's at -2. Montreal is at -7. Every goal matters. Every goal counts. And if your team, the team that you're playing, just can't stop you from putting the ball in the back of the net, I'm sorry. That is what we refer to, I believe, as a U problem. And you tell me any other team that's in a playoff race that's going to take pity over a 90-minute period and go, oh, we've scored too many goals. We're going to have to stop now. Tell that to Aston Villa. Tell that to Tottenham Hotspur. Yeah, they quit. So, no, just because you beat a very poor DC United team, great, fantastic. You need to be happy about this because you got to showcase Brooks Lennon. You got Adam John got the ball in the back of the net. John Gallagher continued to impress. 4 goals in the back of the net that can help you at the end of the year over a tiebreaker. Right now, if the season ended right now, during the run-up, Atlanta would have a home playoff game in that play-in round. They would be playing Montreal at home for a home playoff game, and that goal difference would be a part of making that issue what it is. So don't feel sad that you beat somebody 4-0. That to me is the bottom line. Every goal counts this year. Every single goal counts more than you.
I feel the need for speed. Ow!
Yeah.
Thank
Top
you.
Gun. Thank you, Maverick.
You know what also matters right now? Maybe not necessarily in the standings, but in players on the field.
Yeah.
That would be red card offenses. So let's go ahead and get into that.
Red card. Yeah.
DC had 2 of them.
Yeah.
One was actually given. The other one should have been given later by Disco. And as we learned today,
should have been given on site first and foremost.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right on that. It should have been looked over by VAR. VAR messed up, and so did Disco by today. So let's refresh. Briant got a red card against the tackle on Castro. Yes, Castro in the second half of the game got that red card, was sent off. Then in the 95th minute, I still can't hate him completely. Still has a warm place in my heart, I know. Former Atlanta United player Yamil Asad has a terrible tackle, and I mean terrible tackle.
Awful, late. And as what I've told everybody when I've continued to watch it, the more that I watch it, the worse I feel.
Yeah, it's awful. And the more when I went back and rewatched it today, I could actually hear Lennon and like the sounds he was making, and that made it worse for me because late, blind, he didn't know it was coming. So it's just an egregious tackle regardless. And the fact that VAR crapped the bed on this and then Disco did absolutely nothing about it is insane. And I mean, let's go ahead and get into the reactions from our president, Darren Eales, on this, because he's absolutely right in what he's saying.
Yeah, he was on with Dukes and Bell on 92.9 this afternoon, and Darren's quote from Mike Conti's Twitter. Incredible, and this is on the tackle itself. He says, incredible that he, meaning Yamil Asad, didn't get a retrospective red for that tackle. I don't understand what VAR is for if you look at that and don't see a red card challenge, end quote.
So this brings up a question that we've unfortunately had to face a couple times this year when it comes to offenses against Atlanta United,
right?
And where VAR has failed to work in correcting these issues. And I'm thinking of this from an outsider's perspective. And are we being emotionally upset about this because it's our team, or is this actually just straight on an issue that the league and the disciplinary committee and VAR is not doing enough to protect these players?
Well, and that's the larger issue for me is that you saw what Figal did to John Gallagher in Miami, and the disciplinary committee did nothing for that.
Yeah,
Once again, a player safety issue. Then they're more than happy to give a fine for a simulation in that same match. Then you have the instance with Yamil Asad and Brooks Lennon from the match on the weekend, and I think that, and this is me, I think that by not acting in these two instances, and I'm pulling Atlanta United away from this for a second, by the disciplinary committee not acting in these two offenses, you're setting a dangerous precedent for player safety across the board. So when you have instances that may be similar or something like that, if there's a late tackle, we've seen late tackles, we've seen horrible tackles that should have been reds or what have you. You have instances from this moment forward, specifically with hard tackles, late tackles, tackles completely unnecessary that should be reds. I think that you're risking players' safety in the overall by setting a dangerous precedent and not giving Yamil Asad a retroactive red card here, because you're going to have other instances like this. And if it goes in front of the disciplinary committee and the disciplinary committee sits there and once again doesn't do anything because of similar precedent, I think that you're risking a lot of player safety here. And it's concerning on a couple of different fronts. And then when you bring the Atlanta United element into it, for me, I think it's easy to sit here and say, okay, so you don't want to do anything with Figal and John Gallagher in Atlanta United instance. You don't want to do anything on Brooks Lennon with Yamil Asad, another Atlanta United instance. Make whatever inference you want. It's just, and then you'll sit there and you have a fine on John Gallagher for simulation.
Right.
So, draw whatever conclusion you want. It's just that it's disappointing on a bunch of different levels for me, but I think the overarching element for me is it sets a dangerous precedent going down the line.
My issue is that, yes, dangerous precedent. It's going to severely impact the players' comfortability on the pitch. The fact that they should feel that VAR, they should feel that the referee staff, they should feel like pro, they should feel like the league, the Disco committee has their back, that if something egregious like that happens, that there will be retroactive punishments for it. There's an additional thing that it dampens the quality of the league. If players see things like that happen and nothing is done about it, then that it maybe causes pause. Maybe a player is like, well, I don't know. Am I being protected? It's the same thing that goes on with fouls. When you see players like Barco, you see these DP players being chopped at the bits, game in and game out, and it feels like the refereeing is doing very little about it. It's this the continuous battle that we have against pro referees, and the way that they referee a game, right? Persistent infringement, which is not called enough in this. Obviously, sometimes quick yellows instead of giving somebody maybe one warning before a yellow. We've seen that as well. Quick to the trigger sometimes. And then you've got other times where you have instances like this where something should have been done. And I'd really like to see, and I don't think Pro is going to release it because obviously Disco has done nothing about it, but what was that VAR call on that tackle? I'd really like to know.
Or was there one? Because we don't know the interactions, we don't know the conversations, we don't know the levels of confidence from either side. So that whole three-dimensional aspect is what we need. You need both sides of that conversation.
Right. And I don't see how there's any way that, because I'm just trying to think on the side of would be absolutely ridiculous if VAR looks at that and goes, yeah, that's an offense, and then somehow they decide not to call it because the team's already, one man down and already 4-0 down. So, what's the point of calling the red? Like that, in some ways, I could go on days about this. It just makes absolutely no sense. And it is a tarnish on the league. It's a tarnish to the respect that people have for this league. And it's a huge problem when it comes to player safety.
What faith should I have in the disciplinary committee? Across the board, and I'm not saying I in the first person, but I in more of the collective sense. As if you follow your team and you follow Major League Soccer, what confidence should I have in the disciplinary committee, specifically now with an Atlanta United element twice passed over that should have been absolutely addressed? But what confidence should I have in the disciplinary committee when you have two elements that have happened like this and you don't have decisions made?
Exactly.
I was going to say, you want to get into Russell Canals now that the match is over? Because when you look in the box score, for Russell Canals, you see Russell Canals, the number 4. You see a letter M. You see Russell Canals, and then you have nothing. You have 0 minutes, and then every other category is blank. So I know that you wanted to head in that direction, but yeah, Russell Canals was apparently an unperson.
It's such a strange thing because I remember seeing a person on the pitch, but I maybe I just was seeing things. But this goes back into the whole referee bit, right? How is that mistake made? Like, how is that made? I mean, you can go into this excuse of COVID has changed the way that lineups are delivered and so on and so forth. But this is a huge, excuse my language, F up by the 4th official.
So you're saying EFF. That's a huge EFF up.
That's exactly what I meant. That's
okay.
exactly
What'd you do?
I believe you effed up is what it was. That's what you did.
Exactly. What did you do? How are you going to let a player on the pitch when they are not on the official team lineup? And then Ben Olsen.
What do you want us to do? Forfeit the game? Then shut up.
You know those old like 80s videos where it's just like this really annoying sweater wearing guy who's
so he's like the preppy villain in an 80s movie is what you're saying?
Yes, he is. Does he not feel he fits that so perfectly? Does he not? Come on, imagine him in like a sweater with like the
Greenwich Mean Street Posse. Yes.
Coming out and be like, what do you want us to do? Forfeit? All right, then just shut up. So like it fits so perfectly. It's got like even the scruff, it makes perfect sense. But I mean, you know that if that would have been switched at all, he would have been saying the exact same thing. But it's an embarrassment, and I can understand why he maybe act that way because it's an embarrassment. But it's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment on the team. And it's an embarrassment on the 4th officials. Yeah. And I'm really interested to see what fines come out, what happens with this, because they can't just sweep this under the rug. I mean, they may, but come on. Right? What are you...
I bring up I circle back to my point about the disciplinary committee.
This is the...
See, you can't get past your preppy villain reference.
I can't. It's mentally. I just see him now, mentally in my head.
See, the only thing missing to make that complete would have been having the sweater over the shoulders, tied the knot, and with the sleeves draping down.
Yeah. What do you want us to do? Forfeit? Okay, then shut up. It's
maybe. Did you give him the pipe? Maybe the pipe that he kind of sits there and he's like working the pipe to try to smoke it at some point.
Might be a little bit too much, but he's definitely wearing like white Keds.
Okay, so it's the white Keds. Is it an Argyle sweater that's draped over his shoulders and tied up front?
No, it's just a solid. It's a solid
colored sweater.
Red, like DC United red. Maybe like a white and black checkered button up under. Okay. Yeah. It's just what I'm seeing. That's what
and the finely manicured full beard and mustache routine.
Yep, pretty much.
And he'd be the guy that if you are in your group of 6 and he was just kind of like somebody's extra that came along for dinner, he'd be the last one to show up, order everything on the menu, and then he'd be the first one to leave. Oh, I got a thing, I got to go. Yeah. And he wouldn't help you out with the tip.
Correct.
Okay, just checking.
Welcome to Ben Elson, everybody. It's an embarrassment for DC United. It's an embarrassment for the fourth official. It's an embarrassment for the referees in general on the field. I mean, the whole thing was just confusing. It was a chaotic mess that was outside of just the way DC United played that night. And it was just honestly very entertaining to watch. So despite the confusion and the utter foolishness of it, it was mildly entertaining. So let's transition, right? So from 80s villain into
to a 2000s villain in the purple team.
Exactly. Well, no, technically, we're going to talk about sweaters and sweater wearing.
Okay.
Frank de Boer.
Okay. All right, we'll go there first.
Her style is what maybe an 80s villain would have worn, but Frank de Boer is actually playing another sweater-wearing loving coach for United, one that has had a Tipo statue of it, as a matter of fact, our 2018 champ coach, Tata Martino. You got the Netherlands versus Mexico coming up. And that's going to be a big game. And they are hyping the crap out of that game.
Well, they should. I mean, it's going to be a fun one with El Tri going up against the Netherlands. And when you have this kind of international competition right now, I think it's going to be a hoot. I think it's going to be a fun watch. And I'll get you the juice boxes here in a second for those that are interested in this kind of matchup. And this really would border on degenerate juice boxness if you're really going to be looking at these kinds of things. But as a public service, we do it anyway. But no, this one's going to be fun. And the very complimentary Zoom conversation that the both of them had prepping for the match, where Tata Martino says, we both managed in a city we love. I'm paraphrasing, but we both managed in a city that we love very much. But he had success in his first year.
And you're referring to the Tata Martino interview with Felipe Cardenas from The Athletic. It's a good interview. Obviously, anything that has Tata on it, I read. You got to love the guy. Endearing, charming. Would love for him to come back, but obviously he's in a good place. So we will just love and support him from afar.
You okay? Are you a little verklempt? You going to make it?
Fine. Be okay. But you know that this is a point of talk, right? Because there are a lot of international call-ups going on right now. A lot of teams in MLS have released some players for these international call-ups. Obviously, Atlanta United hasn't had any, thank God, because we're already a bit shorthanded. But it is interesting to talk about because there are two players, in fact, for Orlando when we start discussing about this matchup against Orlando, who have been released. You've got Gallese that is going to Peru, and you've got Mendez that is also out for the count on international call-up duty, and they are actually leaving to join the team. So Orlando is not going to have their goalkeeper.
Well, but remember, though, Brian Rowe isn't chopped liver. He is not the proverbial chopped liver in this case. So Brian Rowe, and for those, your required reading for match days, Julia Poe's article, getting everybody prepped for this particular match. Julia Poe caught up with Oscar Pareja. Oscar Pareja is very, very confident that Brian Rowe can be between the sticks for Orlando City and just kind of and be that stabilizing force there between the sticks for Orlando City. But yeah, Julia Poe caught up with Oscar Pareja to discuss Brian Rowe. Brian Rowe, by all indications, should be the starting keeper tomorrow night.
Yeah, for sure. So that's who you're going to see between the sticks and guarding that back net. But it's still an interesting point because Gallese has been that, Peruvian octopus.
There you go.
So an incredibly good goalkeeper, one who actually kept the Orlando City Lions in the game against the New York Red Bulls because they had a lot of shots on goal. So really quickly just going to go over the Orlando versus New York Red Bulls game so we can sort of see what we're looking at when it comes to how we could possibly match up against the Lions. Obviously, on the 24th minute, so this is something we should be aware of and prepared for, but Orlando does like to strike, and they like to strike early, and they like to strike hot. 24th minute, there was a header for Daryl Dike, who in all accounts is probably going to start the match against Atlanta United. Most of the lineups are predicting that. He is also one of the lead contenders for Rookie of the Year. He's had an insane breakout season. Really, really good player. Has had a slight loss of form recently, but I think the match against New York Red Bulls kicks that right back into gear, so he's still going to be a threat going forward. In the 26th minute, you had Mueller actually with a one-on-one versus the New York Red Bull goalkeeper, but he couldn't convert. So this is another thing that Mueller's had, where he has that ability to read the ball and break the lines and get these 1v1 matchups, and sometimes he doesn't convert. He had another one later in the game where he had a good run through, and then he skied it over that back of the net. So you're still going to look at Mueller probably breaking lines and trying to slip in behind defenders, which should be an interesting matchup against our back line, who has been a little bit more aware of those runs, but it's still something that we're going to have to be switched on for. And then you had Urso, who had a goal in quick transition in the 50th minute. That's another thing that we're going to have to be watching from Orlando. They're really good at quick transitions and building out of the back quickly, like we do on some points in time. And then in the 54th minute, the New York Red Bulls get a goal off of a poor clearance and Orlando pressure, which is something that I think Atlanta United can be doing, which is pressuring the ball in Orlando's final third. And then, you just have Galese with the octopus hands, keeping them in the game for the rest of the match. And then Orlando had a really great goal with open lines and a slot in the pass. But Orlando is also suffering from an injury list like Atlanta United is. Let's get into that, because they actually have quite a bit of players.
Okay, and there's one injury that seems to be very, very popular right now with Orlando City.
Oh yes, I forgot about this. So let's just before we even get into what the cause of the injury is, let's just go over the list of injured players.
So here's your injury report for Orlando City, courtesy of MLSsoccer.com. Dom Dwyer's out with a knee. Joao Matinho's out with a groin injury. And then you have Yuri Rosell out, Tesho Akindele out, Mauricio Pereira out. And they are all out with an undisclosed injury. I'd love to know where on the body the undisclosed bone is, but apparently it is an undisclosed injury to add to Jegson Mendez and Pedro Gillespie out for international duty. So that's your injury report and your internationals who are not going to be participating as we try to determine where the undisclosed bone is.
Yeah, that's such an interesting fact, because it's like the undisclosed bone has also injured Barco this year. It's crazy. It's a knock, and then he's good, and then he's not good, and then it's this back and forth. And there's been a lot of talk about what's going on with Barco, and maybe we can get into that a little bit of that with Jason if he wants to come on and discuss that. But I don't feel like the team is being non-transparent with us. I don't feel like
business, honestly, though, what business is it of ours?
It's not.
Outside of the Children's Healthcare of Atlanta training ground, what business is it of anyone outside of that property? What is going on with players? And obviously, I kind of joked about the undisclosed bone for Orlando, but why should, and I wish I had a red flag, why should you sit there and you wave a big red flag and sit there and say, yeah, he's got something wrong with him and it's right here?
Yeah.
Why should you give that kind of advanced intel to anybody to give any kind of competitive advantage across the board? Why do that? To sit there and go, well, it's he's got an injury and it's his knee. In the Stanley Cup playoffs, it's always a lower body injury, an upper body injury. It's an undisclosed injury because you don't want the opponent to chase after a weakness.
Right.
I completely understand it on all sides. The undisclosed bone or the undisclosed muscle, I know it can be tender. I know it could take a little while for it to come back to full song, but I completely understand the rationale for not saying what it is.
Yeah. So that's been a very interesting debate, discussion, Twitter feud.
Yeah.
This type of thing. I I really don't feel like the team is not, like I said, not being as transparent as they can. And I think just because of the year that we have had, that desire for information, desire for clarity and for truth, because there's so much going on around the world right now where it feels like we don't know what's up and what's down and what's right and what's left. And so we just want one thing in our life that we love and we watch and we subscribe to be transparent and clear and obvious and forthright. And sometimes you don't get that. And I think that we just need to be understanding as a fan base that the front office is going to do whatever they need to do and whatever they feel is right to move them forward. Because at the end of the day, we're battling for a playoff spot.
And so, I'm going to sit here and say, yes, one of our star players has an injured knee, or yes, he has an injured hamstring, or yes, he has a brace on his wrist from trying to be a goaltender and defender. No, this is, it was, but you understand where I'm saying here. It's like you don't want to disclose that kind of information. You don't see that in college football. Kirby Smart at the University of Georgia has basically locked down any kind of information like that. He's like, no, I'm not going to say what's going on for competitive advantage and things like that for player injuries and all that kind of stuff. Other instances I would have issue, but when it comes to just injuries in general, National Football League, Bill Belichick isn't going to tell you what's wrong with a star running back. Yeah, it's like, he's got an injury. He'll be okay. Game time decision. That's what you get from these coaches. But no, I understand completely why, when it comes to this season, specifically when we're talking about MLS, why you say what you say and why you don't say what you don't.
Exactly. And so that way, when we're looking at the lineup of the match that we could possibly see tomorrow, it is probably best bet that Barco will not be on the starting lineup. He may or may not be in the 18. Who knows? The lineups this year have been hard to determine. And on that note, we're going to bring in the one guy, the soccer god, who might have an answer.
The great and powerful Oz in charge of everything.
Exactly. The man behind the Twitch curtain, the one, the only, Jason Longshore.
There you go.
Yo, what's up?
Love it. I love it. So let's talk a little bit about the match that we've got coming up against Orlando and who we could possibly see for Atlanta United in the starting 11. Obviously, we just had this talk about Barco possibly and probably not being in the starting 11. Maybe the 18 match day squad, but again, that's sort of up in the air. But I think just because of the energy and the momentum behind him, it's a good chance that Gallagher is starting. And I would also probably say John, Mr. Pillow Feet himself.
Pillow Feet.
Yeah, I got no problem with rolling the same group out again if they're able to go. Maybe Dom is able to give you more minutes. I think Barco will probably come back off the bench first. We know Josetu's out on this one. I think you'll ease everybody back in. You saw Dom come off the bench first time. I think the one who could come into the lineup the fastest when he's cleared is Marcelino Moreno for Saturday. And that would mean, I think, in this case, you're going to see the same midfield with the expectation that Moreno starts on Saturday. You'll see the same guys go again here, potentially. Mo Adams was very good. So I think he can keep his spot and a lot of this comes down to stuff we don't know right now. We don't know fitness levels. We don't know how they came out of that match. Or is there a concern about an injury? Is there a concern about them being able to play more than 60 minutes? Stuff like that we don't know. Didn't appear to be anything to worry about coming out of the DC match. So if you're able to take the same group and go again, I have no problem with that in this case because you're going to get Moreno into the lineup as fast as possible. Dom is getting closer. You hope that Barco is going to get back in there quickly. So you've got changes coming while this group's been successful. Keep rolling with it.
Let me go back to something that Kelly mentioned early in the show when we were talking about what happened in the DC match. She says that the Brooks Lennon goal is a goal of the season contender. What about you?
It's really good. I don't think it'll get that just because of other long distance strikes we've seen in the league this year. But I mean, it's a great goal, and I think something that's got lost in the shuffle with that is the way the whole play developed, because it started with an overhit cross from Lennon to begin with that Atlanta had patience to keep. I believe it was Gallagher who tracked it down, kept it moving, brought it back to the back line, then Walks played it up. Lennon wins the 50-50 after a poor clearing header and pounces on it. But Atlanta didn't give it away recklessly after the overhit cross. These are little things that I think show that things are coming together with this group. And that goal, when it happened, it was one that was needed because, you get the first goal, you're playing a bad team. Okay, cool. You have the lead. Everything's good. You don't want them to find any confidence in it. You get goal number 2 against a bad team, they're dead. They're done. I mean, they start subbing in guys who aren't even on the roster. They're so messed up. Come on. So you want the second goal.
You shook them that bad, right?
Yeah, you want the second goal against a bad team. The second goal is always the one. It's when you look back at like stats long term, and I know everybody throws that thing out about the 2-goal lead. The second goal is so much more valuable than trying to hold on to one. You're always better to go for the next one. And that's what Atlanta did in this game. And that second goal was critical to giving them the momentum to keep pushing forward.
Yeah. And what we also saw from the team was even though they had that 2-goal lead, they still kept pushing forward and they still kept prying in to that wound that they caused DC United. This is something you and I talked about the last run-up. This need for urgency with this team and this need to be the bad guys. Did you see that attitude change with this team when they took the pitch when they took the field on Saturday?
Yeah, it's been this way for the last 3 games. I think everybody's talking about Orlando and how good they are, but Atlanta's won 2 of their last 3. And when you go back and you look at the numbers, and I wanted to crunch some of the numbers on these last 3 games, Atlanta is doing so many things differently than they have this season. So there's a few stats that I'll look at from a team perspective to kind of get a sense of how things are working and how a team will play. Shot creating actions is one. It's just a very general thing, like actions that create a shot for yourself or for others. Atlanta this season is averaging 15.73 per 90 minutes. That's 22nd in the league. Orlando's 15th in the league. They're averaging 17.87. The last 3 games, Atlanta's had 19 in each game. So, okay, they're creating more shots. All right, one step in the right direction. Key passes, chances created. For the season, Atlanta's doing 6.73 of those, 23rd in the league. In the last 3 games, it was 7 against Dallas, it was 10 against Chicago, it was 9 against DC. Above the average that they've had this season. Okay, let's look at the defensive. Let's stay on the offensive side for a second. So passes into the final third. About what they've been doing, which has been very high. They're 5th in the league in passes into the final third. They've been right around that average all season, 34 per game. Progressive passes is something that they haven't done as much of. That's passes moving the ball forward 10 yards or more at a time. Atlanta is somewhat low, 40.73 for the season. These past 3 games, 43, 51, 47. So they're getting forward quicker. The defensive side, I think, is where you see the difference, though. That's the massive element here. Pressures. Pressures is something that has frustrated me for a while now because I feel like Atlanta hasn't been pressuring the opponent as much as they need to successfully. That has jumped up lately. They're up to 9th in the league in that with about 43.5 per game. But you look at these last 3 games, 52 against Dallas, 56 against Chicago, and they were chasing that game, so okay. 47 against DC. That's 3 games where you're above your average in terms of successful pressures. I mean, you pressured the ball 182 times against Chicago. You are chasing the game, but you're putting forth a lot of energy. So the question about can you continue this, can you sustain pressing more? You're showing so far that you've been able to do it. Tackles and interceptions, per game, just basic defensive actions. You're way ahead of your average for those. So they are doing so much more right now, and they've won 2 of their last 3. You compare to Orlando's last 3, where they haven't lost. Your numbers are better than Orlando in these kinds of metrics. So this is a game where Atlanta's been more active than Orlando in their last 3. They had the game in Chicago where they conceded early, and that's what hurt them. But outside of that, this is a team that's playing well. They still have room to grow. I think they have room to grow in the final third for sure. But this is a team that's playing well. This is a team that is working hard. This is a team that is making things happen. And you compare to Orlando even for the season, Atlanta's numbers don't compare badly to a team like Orlando that's doing really, really well. Atlanta's got the ability to go on a little bit of a run here when they get this type of energy, this type of work rate. They add Moreno, they get Dom healthy, they get Barco healthy. This is a team that can make some noise. They've got to keep it up, and it's going to be tough because of the schedule. But that attitude shift, it's happened.
What's it been like to see Jeff Larentowicz as that stabilizer in the back over this last handful of matches?
I think that's part of it. I think having somebody like Larentowicz who brings that type of energy and brings that organization when it's needed. Look, this team has been better with Jeff Larentowicz in it. You know, that's something that we've seen, feels like almost every year that he's been in Atlanta. He's kind of counted out. He's not expected to be the main guy, and he is the main guy. This year, you know, it was a question if he was going to come back. He comes back. He wasn't playing a ton early on. Now he's critical. You have to have him in the team as the 6. You can move the pieces around him. You can have Mo Adams there. Eric Remedi's got work to do to get back into the lineup. He lost his spot after the Chicago game. He's got to wait for somebody to have a poor game, or he's got to beat them out in training, or somebody's going to get tired and have an opportunity because Mo Adams has worked himself back into that rotation. He had a good match here. You've got Josetu, who is injured right now. You've got Emerson Heineman, who's playing really, really well at the moment. And you're adding another central midfielder in Moreno. So Larentowicz is the one who gives you the ability for all of those guys, Adams, Remedi when he's there, Josetu, Heineman, Moreno, to go forward. Now, all of them have the mentality to come back and defend as well, but knowing you've got Larentowicz there and you know you can count on him gives you more confidence going forward.
Yeah, and this is actually a good segue into the question that I wanted to ask, which was this sort of interchanging defense that we've seen. Obviously, Meza is incredibly good on the ball, and whenever he's on the back line, it is pretty solid. But you do have this ability to switch between, right now, 4 solid backs. You're looking at Franco Escobar when he's dropped in. He's been a surprise on that back line. He's been stable. And might I also say he did not get a yellow card in the game against DC, which is fantastic. You also have Miles Robinson, who is unfortunately playing that yellow card thin line on the suspension. Then you have Anton Walks, who has had a breakout season coming back in for Atlanta United than when he was here for his original year. And then, again, like I said, Meza. So you've got these 4 players that are doing really well and that can combine and make this defense sort of solid. And I think that that's something that I haven't seen a lot in MLS right now, is this sort of interchanging makeshift back line that you can put together depending on whoever you play against and what strikers you're coming up against to fit the right defense to attack.
Yeah, the funny thing is the guy who's the stalwart of that back line is George Bello, the youngest one. I mean, he's the one you want on the left side every single time because of what he can do going forward, but he's also a guy who's winning seemingly every tackle right now. Bello's been a stud on this back line, and he gives you that flexibility to know you don't have to worry about the left side. The right side, you can start with Escobar. You can move him centrally if you want to. You can drop Lennon to right back, no problem. Nothing dramatically changes there. You've got Robinson when he's fully healthy, and he hasn't been. I think he's kind of battling through just not being 100% right now. You've got Walks, who has been solid every time he's been on the field, and you've got Meza kind of rounding back into form as well when he hasn't been 100%. So you're able to mix and match a little bit, and it gives you that flexibility, and we've seen Stephen Glass do this a few times now, to pull one of your center backs if you have to, slide Escobar in centrally, which is always easier than just bringing somebody cold in as a center back, Escobar slides in, Lennon drops back. You can bring on Jürgen Damm, you can bring on Jake Mulroney in that right wing position, keep Lennon on the field with his ability to get forward and not lose anything defensively. It's a pretty cool trick to have, and it's not something that a lot of teams do have that flexibility to do. This is a team that players are expected to be able to contribute in all phases. So defenders have to be able to attack, attackers have to be able to defend, and when you have somebody like Brooks Lennon who can be effective getting forward, putting in crosses from a right wing position or a right back position, you're in good shape.
All right, Kelly, we're up against it. I think it's time for numbers, isn't it?
It's time for numbers. Yes, definitely. So as the juice box purveyors have been saying, this is a draw through and through. But I'm actually going to contradict that. I don't think it will be a draw through and through. I actually think it's going to be the Velvet
driving slipper lock of the week.
Yes, I think it's going to be a 2-1, and I do think that with the momentum that we had from the past win and just the overall fight, because it is against Orlando, I do see this being as a 2-1 victory for Atlanta United. What do you say, John?
Let's see. See, now you beat me to it since you gave my number first for the Velvet driving slipper lock of the week. Let me go the other way. I'll go 1-1 draw because of Brian Rowe. I think that Brian Rowe will just go in to Gillespie's spot between the sticks. I think that he will prove Oscar Pareja correct in trusting him with the job in Gillespie's absence. So I'll go 1-1 draw, and I think that Gallagher gets another one.
Okay. All right. Jason?
I'll go 2-2. I think it'll be a little sloppy because of playing again on short rest. Orlando not quite 100% with the injuries, with also the international absences. I think Atlanta will create chances. I think that part of the game is coming together nicely. I do worry about Dike and his size up top. He's a handful. I worry about Chris Mueller in the 1v1s. If he's on the right side, the Mueller versus Bello matchup could be a fun one. 2-2, I think both teams will have some good attacking play. I think both teams will have some mistakes defensively and share the points, which isn't a bad result if you're Atlanta United right now.
No, it's absolutely not. And obviously going against any team that is your rival is going to be a contentious match to begin with. Jason, where can they listen to, watch, get everything they need to know from you heading into the match tomorrow?
So tomorrow we've got the show in the morning, 9 o'clock. We've got stoppage time, facebook.com/929thegame at noon with me and Mike Conti. We've got the AT&T countdown to kickoff on Atlanta United social media channels about 6 o'clock with the lineup, and I can't wait to see what this lineup is, how many changes we see. Then we'll be on the air at 6:30 for the Five Stripes countdown. Kickoff will be probably 7:08, just after 7 o'clock, and we'll have the full-time report for an hour after the final whistle.
Okay, awesome. John, where are you going to be watching the match?
I will be watching the match inside the building. Jason and I will be separated from our particular elements.
Don't
Jason
get near me.
I'm planning on it. Nope. I will be over in the press box section. Jason will be over in the suite section, and near the twain shall meet. But I will be inside the press box, keeping an eye on things from that perspective.
Awesome. So excited. Well, we are all ready to see how we face up against Orlando. It's going to be a fun one. I'm hoping to see this momentum carry over and for the guys to walk away from the match tomorrow not being the good guys. We will obviously see you guys on Friday of this week against the game on Saturday, which hopefully will now have a DP in it. And I'm not talking about Bartco. So regardless, keep up with all of us. John, where can they find you?
At OSG Nelson on the Twitters, at Soccer Down Here on the Twitters as well. Cute Sports Guy on the IG, and John Freeman Nelson on the Facebook.
Awesome. And Jason, where can they find you?
Long Shoe everywhere. I don't have a bunch of silly names.
And you can find me at the Kelly Francis, also everywhere because I don't have silly names.
Kelly.
Exactly. This was the run-up. We will see you guys on Friday. Thank you so much for joining in.